Moments ago, the new college football playoff rankings were released. I know a lot of y'all are watching college basketball. For yours truly, this is the most college basketball I'll watch until March. What do we think about these rankings? More importantly, what did we learn from the second installment of the college football playoff rankings? We'll unpack it right now. Some thoughts on the top 25, some thoughts on where this current college football playoff bracket stands. Yes, bracket. We'll unpack that together right now, but first things first, make sure you're subscribed right here, baby. We got instant reaction for you all year long to the college football playoff rankings, to the games that are happening, to things going on in the world of college football recruiting. Bottom line, make sure you're dialed in here. Make sure you're subscribed. We appreciate you in advance for doing so. So let's give you a couple of takeaways from how this top 25 looks. We'll get to the meat of what the playoff is going to look like here, or how it looks right now, at least in a matter of moments. There would be riots in this studio if South Carolina was not ranked in the second installment of these rankings. With that being said, you tilt your head a little bit at LSU being ranked a spot behind South Carolina, even though they have the head-to-head and they beat South Carolina in Willie B. I digress. Good to see South Carolina ranked. I think that's a win. Now, Colorado, man, just hanging out at 17. And Colorado, I mean, they have a chance to make these rankings not even matter at all if they go ahead and win out and win the Big 12 and then obviously punch the ticket to the college football playoff. The story that we're all tracking here that's much more intriguing, how highly ranked does Colorado need to be so if they do win their conference, they're able to pass a Boise State and be one of those top 4 ranked conference champs to then get a bye? Because Boise State this week, from what they did this weekend, back a spot to number 13. So that would still put them in the field of 12, being the highest-ranked G5 potentially conference champion. However, they're back a spot again in the rankings, which I think is worth noting here because you see the gap starting to close between a team like Colorado and a team like Boise State when it comes to the rankings. And I was talking with Caden Smith here before we got rolling. Made a great point. There's not a lot of opportunities here if you're Boise State to really wow people when it comes to who you have left to play. Like Colorado, they're going to get a chance to still play, I would say, some teams that, what's the right way to say this, are just better than who Boise State's going to play. Like if Colorado goes out and beats Utah and goes out and beats Kansas and goes and beats Oklahoma State, what'd Boise State do? They won their conference. Awesome. Beat San Jose State. I'm not dunking on San Jose State here. I'm all about it, but like we understand now these two gauntlets they both have to run to get to the college football playoff, not created equal. So I'm curious to see how that shakes out. I do think, though, there's probably more meat on the bone there for Colorado. But, again, we'll see what happens there. Army, undefeated. Just one more note here on the top 25 before we move into this top 12. Army still undefeated. Curious to see if they're able to make up some ground here and be that G5 rep. Because you're looking at the rankings, you say, okay, Army, they're undefeated. Boise State's got one loss, right? Yeah, but Boise State's one loss is by 3 points on the road to the number 1 team in America. So, for Army, if you're squinting, trying to see a path into the college football playoff, I think you got to definitively beat Notre Dame and then hope that Boise State looks a little bit lackluster the rest of the way. So those are some thoughts on the top 25. Let's get to this field of 12, though. Already mentioned Boise State. With them being the highest-ranked G5 team, presumably G5 champ, they would be at the 12 spot. However, Georgia was ranked number 12. Now, ranked number 12 and seeded number 12, two different things. Georgia, if the playoff were to happen tomorrow, based on these rankings, would be left out of the dance. I want to say this right now. Based on these rankings, based on what the committee is telling us, Georgia, as a 3-loss team, I have a very difficult time seeing a way where they would somehow make it in. So we said it during our preview video today when it comes to the Georgia-Tennessee game. This is the biggest game in the regular season under Kirby Smart since he got the job at Georgia. Period. Mic drop. The end. Georgia was favored before the year started, y'all. We picked them on this show to win the whole darn thing. And we're sitting here before Thanksgiving saying they could have a 3rd loss and be out of the dance. I think that is definitively what these rankings tell us. And that is a wild world to live in here in the world that is the college football landscape in 2024. Now, Ole Miss is 11. That's fine. We're at this point in the rankings here with 11 and 10 where the rankings and seedings still correlate. That ranking's fine. I'm cool with that. Ole Miss, though, I'll just make sure we have this out there. If they were to make this legitimately a best team rankings, which they say they are, but we understand resume factors in. I get it, you lost to Kentucky. I get it, you lost to LSU, so you can't rank them a whole lot higher than 11. They're a lot better than 11. I would take Ole Miss today over Miami, probably take Ole Miss over Notre Dame. I'd absolutely take Ole Miss over a BYU if they played tomorrow on neutral site. More on that in a little bit. Ole Miss, you're fine with the ranking, okay? You win out. I think you feel good about your chances to make the college football playoff. Lane Kiffin doing what Saban did for a long time there, having his team peak at the right time, back against the wall. You got Georgia coming to Oxford. You beat the brakes off them. Left no doubt. Very excited to see what they do the rest of the way. Now, speaking of Saban, he's no longer in Alabama, or in Tuscaloosa rather, but Alabama sitting there at number 10. This also feels like validity of, okay, if you win, you're in. A lot of questions of, well, hey, they lost to Vandy. We don't know what Vandy is at that point in time of the year. At that point, we're still looking at the Vanderbilt logo and saying, are you serious? How'd you lose to Vandy? Okay, Vandy has put their best foot forward the rest of the way. The Tennessee loss. Hey, it's not good to lose to Tennessee, especially in the manner that you did. But again, that loss is aging well. And the win over LSU in Death Valley, the eye test, I think, was factored in pretty heavily for Alabama to be here at 10. So you feel good about your chances if you win out to make the college football playoff. Miami chilling at 9 in the rankings. They would be the 4th seed, making sure we're all aligned there. Ranked 9, but based on this playoff bracket, they would be the 4th seed. So if the playoff were to start tomorrow, they would play the winner of Ohio State, Boise State. Y'all, that is very, very different than being the 3rd seed and having to play the potentially 6th seed or 11th seed or whoever it ends up being. I'm just saying, Miami at 4. Don't worry about it too much is, I think, probably the advice I would give to our friends in Coral Gables. Cam Ward's your quarterback. As long as that's the guy pulling the trigger back there for you, you're going to have a chance in every single game. He's that good. Now, you still got to handle business. You got to have the defense wake up a little bit here. I think the loss against Georgia Tech was the wake-up call they needed. So I'm excited to see how they play here going forward. But Miami at 9, I think that's about right, if we're just going to be honest here. Nothing controversial there. Sorry for those that were looking for the hot take on Miami. I think that's about right. Notre Dame at 8, they would be the 9 seed. Same thing was said about Alabama. With them being at the spot they're at right now in these rankings, the one loss, obviously, to NIU is embarrassing, but, like, if you win, you're in. No issue with Notre Dame right there. Tennessee ranked 7th, the 8th seed. They have a chance to, like we said about Colorado, I feel the same way about Tennessee. Like, you have some margin a little bit if you're Tennessee to drop a game. You don't want to drop a game, but you probably could drop a game in Athens and still feel good about your chances to end up making the college football playoff if you won out. But if you go beat Georgia in Athens, and heck, we'll see how Nico Iamaleava is looking when it comes time to, have some more information on that game. But, like, if you go beat Georgia in Athens, you send a message that you're not just, like, here to take part in the college football playoff. You are legitimately a national title contender if you're Tennessee, and you'll get that done. So, rank 7, seed 8, it is what it is. Go leave no doubt on the field. Now, this is probably the strongest opinion I have on these college football playoff rankings. BYU at 6, seeded number 3. And I get it. If we're going off the resume, that's cool, man. I'm all about it. I'm all about it. Have them at 3. Put them at 6, whatever you want to do. I get it. You have the win over SMU. That's nice. You beat Kansas State. Awesome. I would take any SEC team that is ranked behind BYU, and I would take them with a touchdown and probably take them to cover that spread. Like, BYU, I think on a neutral site with South Carolina, gets ragdolled. BYU versus A&M, got nobody blocking Shamar Stewart. BYU and Ole Miss, did we see what Ole Miss did to Georgia? And Georgia did not look great. Is anybody from BYU's roster able to line up in the 2 deep for Georgia? I don't think so. And I'm dunking on BYU a little bit here, but that's just how I feel. The resume, I get it. If we want to factor them into these rankings, cool. I know it'll shake itself out when we get onto the field, but, like, I feel very strongly about this. BYU, if we're going off the resume, have them at 6, awesome. Give them the 3rd seed, cool. You win the Big 12, more power to you. But BYU, I'm just saying this right now. When BYU sees a team from the SEC or a team from the Big 10, it will be ugly. It'll be ugly. It'll be over by the 3rd quarter. Indiana at 5, 7 seed. If you're a BYU fan, you're upset about what I just said about where you have BYU right now and saying, what does he say? Why is he upset with where BYU is at? If I want more respect from BYU, go do what Indiana's doing. And I get the game against Michigan leaves a little bit more to be desired. Would like to see, definitively beat Michigan when you have a chance to, quite frankly, with how that roster is struggling offensively right now. But still, I think the reason why Indiana is at 5 to me and not higher based on what they've done at this point in the year I think we can now definitively say the committee is making these rankings with a little bit of context. Like in a vacuum, Indiana, heck, put them at 3. If it's solely about this year, I'm fine with putting Indiana at that 3 spot or that 4 spot. However, I think the reason they're not getting the Michigan treatment from last year is because Michigan, in the mind of the committee, I'm guessing, got a little bit of benefit of the doubt because they were a team that had top 5 returning production in America, returning quarterback. And a team, again, I just mentioned returning production. That production was from a team that just won the Big Ten last season and a coach that was back. So I think whether we want to admit it or not, Indiana could be higher, but I think the anxiety around what they will be when they play in Ohio State or they play a team like a Penn State potentially in the Big Ten title game or an Oregon or whoever, I think that's the reason why we don't have them higher. Penn State, ranked 4th, seeded 6th. I'm great with that ranking, but if they're going to be anybody that's ahead of them, that Ohio State rep has got to matter for Andy Koltanecki. And what I mean by that is offensively, man, like you just left too many bullets in the chamber. We said that on our last reaction to these rankings. Feel the same way this week. Now, the good news is you got a chance to play Ohio State in that spot and learn from those mistakes. If you can do it and improve, be more explosive, be more creative, okay, and now we're cooking with gas. But fine with that ranking. Turn the lights out on us. That's why we feel about these rankings right now. Texas at 3, 2 seed. How many dudes is Texas going to get drafted? And that sounds like a dumb thing to say, but like when you look at the overall like level of talent on this roster, which I think has to matter when you talk about best team for a school like or for an operation like Texas and for the rest of these schools, like I think Texas at 3 is exactly where they probably should be. So I get, is their resume or their record as impressive in some respects as a Indiana? I mean, I don't have 0 losses, so the SEC factor probably leans in for Texas a little bit. I think the win over Vanderbilt probably ages well. I think the win over Michigan when they got it was impressive. But, like, all I'm trying to say here is I think Texas is going to be there at the end of this thing because of what I just said. A lot of NFL players. They have, I think, a NFL caliber quarterback, an experienced quarterback, and a head coach who knows what it looks like to win at a very high level, especially given his time in Tuscaloosa. So Texas at 3, probably about right. Ohio State at 2, man. They would get the 5 seed based on this format. Now, the 5 seed is ideal so long as that 12 seed that you would play doesn't somehow turn into Alabama, doesn't somehow turn into a 2-loss SEC team. Because I've said this for a while, the 5 seed is just the blue-collar 1 seed. Like, you play a G5 school, not a easy game by any stretch, but it's definitely a more winnable game than if you were to roll up against a 2-loss SEC team in that first round. So for Ohio State, just keep doing what you're doing. Hope we get to see them play Oregon a second time in the Big Ten title game just because I think those are the 2 best teams in the Big Ten Conference. But regardless, just something to monitor there when it comes to how this whole thing is going to shake out with seeding. And then obviously, undisputed, number 1, the Oregon Ducks. I don't really know what we're supposed to say here. Best team in college football, best resume in college football, left nothing to be desired. I cannot wait to watch them run it up in the regular season because I've been saying this for a while. I think right now, you can start the college football playoff and feel good about your chances if you're Oregon. A lot of other teams, you're working through different kinks, right? You're patching holes. You're trying to figure out exactly, if you have all the gears totally in place and all the screws tightened. Like, I think Oregon's a well-oiled machine. They're ready to roll. Can they sustain that? Because there is such a thing now as peaking too early. I don't think Oregon's done that, but if the playoff started today, I would take Oregon to make a deep run, if not win the whole darn thing. So we'll keep a pulse on that. But to recap it for you here, the college football playoff rankings are as follows. Stay with me because the rankings and the seedings in this whole situation, not the same. So without further ado, ranked 13th is Boise State. They would be seeded 12th. Georgia would be ranked 12th, but given this format, they would not make the college football playoff because that G5 champion, the highest ranked G5 champion, will bump them out of that field of 12. Now 11, 10, and I guess 11 and 10 is, I guess, as easy as it gets here. Ole Miss at 11, ranked 11, as well as seeded 11th. Alabama ranked and seeded 10th. Miami, ranked 9th, seeded 4th. Notre Dame, ranked 8, seeded 9th. Tennessee, ranked 7th, seeded 8th. BYU, ranked 6th, seeded 3rd because of the potential at this point in time for them to be the Big 12 champion. Indiana ranked 5th, seeded 7th. Penn State ranked 4th, seeded 6th. Texas ranked 3rd with the 2nd seed. Ohio State ranked 2nd, but based on the fact that Oregon ranked at 1 would be the Big 10 rep, you would have Ohio State as the 5th seed. Then obviously Oregon we just spoke to, them being ranked number 1, they would obviously have the number 1 seed. So it's mental gymnastics across the board here when it comes to these college football playoff rankings versus these college football playoff seedings. This is awesome, man. This is exciting. And we were talking before we got rolling here in the studio. These ranking reveal shows are getting increasingly more interesting because last couple of years with the 4-team playoff, as much as you love the 4-team playoff, man, the reveal show, you could pretty much guess what that 4-team field was going to look like before they even went to Reese Davis and everyone at the desk. Like you knew how that thing was going to look. Maybe there was a surprise at who was 5 and who was 7 and maybe something of that nature maybe made you raise your eyebrows. But like in the 12-team playoff era, I said it before, the eye test is going to factor in a whole lot based on what this committee is continuing to tell us. And these conference title races, too, it's going to be must-see TV all the way down to the finish. Tomorrow on the Hard Count, we will be live 11 a.m. Eastern, talking playoff hypotheticals. Touching base here now with some more context on the 10-2 madness that is looking like it may play out in the SEC. For myself, JD PicKell, for Caden Smith and Trey Andy on the ones and twos, we appreciate y'all. We love y'all. Make sure you subscribe on your way out. We're going to keep this party rolling. We will see y'all.